So when you talked about the different companies that you've been at, you didn't mention Apple. And I hear that you actually worked for them, and there's some interesting stories there. Do you want to share one of them?
Certainly. So I was the infamous first employee to quit Apple. They didn't have their own building. Jobs in Wozniak had different offices. Jobs in the front, Wozniak in the back. 15 employees, and I assembled flat out 50 Apple IIs a month. So that was my flat out top. And one day Jobs walks in with the bottom half of his three-piece suit on a hanger, jeans, which he wore. He lived in a commune. He had boots on, combat boots. That's what they wore back then. And a top half of a three-piece suit. And he says, "I'm going to sell the Apple II to Sears." And I went, "Oh, you're going to have to get a lot more help because I'm flat out moving at 50 a month." And I left because I didn't have a swing shift, and I wanted to go to school to become a technician. And of course, they didn't have a swing shift because they didn't have their first building. A year later, they bought their first building. And no, I was working at Hewlett-Packard by then.
So I guess you weren't in on any of the shares.
No, none of them. They weren't handing them out to assemblers at that point.
So I was sitting with where they have the Computer Hall of Fame, and they were doing who was coming in that year. I'm sitting beside this guy, and he seems to know quite a bit about the industry. And we're having some really good conversations. And I was a professor, and he was he taught kindergarten children. And I said, "So what do you teach them?" And he says, "I only teach one subject, and only kindergarten students." I said, "So what is it?" And he says, "How to use computers." And we're talking, and it was great. And then all of a sudden he says to me, "Oh, I'm going to have to excuse myself for a minute, but I'll be right back." And he walks towards the stage. And I don't know anything about this guy with this huge beard on him. And he walks up to the front, accepts the award, and he walks back down there. And he says to me, I said to him, "You know, you could have told me who you were." And he says to me, "Well, I knew who you were, so..." He says, "I knew your name is Robert Cohen." He says, "So I'm sure you would have known mine." He says, "So I thought you probably would know mine."
Not until he was on Dancing with the Stars.
Yeah, I heard about that. But he's such a great guy. They're so different.
Yeah. Oh, so there's one story on Woz. I go in the back room and I'd see the engineers back there, and they had a Commodore 64, and they had this naked woman on it, and they'd go, "Wow, look at the pixels on her."
I'm actually really good friends with the person who started the Commodore 64. Sorry, you're not going to hit me or anything. But yeah, he comes over to my house all the time.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And he's Canadian.
Oh.
Just don't want you to know that. All right. Great sharing stories with you.